A free trade zone that stretches from Lisbon to Vladivostok. Vladimir Putin has set out an ambitious vision of how he hopes Russia's relations with Europe will develop during a visit to Berlin. Now, in a speech to business leaders, Putin raised the issue of European plans to liberalize the oil and gas pipeline network. This would mean any supplier should be able to access the pipeline regardless of ownership. Putin warns this could remove the incentive to invest in infrastructure.
Investors have of course figured that they will receive priority rights to use this infrastructure to pump their own gas. It is their gas and investment in the pipeline. I think that the mechanical application of these provisions in the third energy package will put plans for modernising these networks and infrastructure development in doubt.
Joining me now to discuss Putin's Berlin visit is Ben Aris, Editor-in-Chief of Business New Europe. Hello to you, Ben. So what do you think of Putin's speech in Berlin this time? If you remember Munich's speech, that was a bit different. Now, rhetoric is different now.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, it stands in stark contrast to 2007, where Putin basically read the riot act to Europe and said, you know, come on guys, you've got to cooperate with us and be friendly, and instead Europe was continuously bashing Russia. And this time it's friendship, but on both sides as well. I think that's also very interesting. It's not just the Russians now reaching out to Europe, but the Europeans are reaching back, particularly the Germans and the French, who are throwing themselves at Russia as a prospective market.
So why is he doing it now at this particular moment?
Well, the crisis has changed everything on both sides of the fence. Obviously, Russia was hit hardest of all the big emerging markets by the crisis and suffered a massive contraction. And with the deficit and lower oil prices, they need money, they need investment particularly. And not just the cash, but they also need the know-how. They've woken up to that fact. But on the other side of the fence, countries like Germany, companies there are facing a very, very flat, if not decreasing market. And if they're looking for growth, they're going to have to come east. And there's been several examples of really successful German investments here already. And so now the government's behind that whole initiative to push their own companies. So they're being pushed and pulled into Russia.
Well, how significant is the visa issue for Russia?
Well, the visa's tied up in all of this. I mean, on the one side, if you want to invest in Russia, then you should be able to get in easily with a visa, and it's still difficult to get. But on the other side, with the elections, the parliamentary elections coming up in 2011, the top of the list for the people in Russia is freedom to travel, something they never had under the Soviet Union, and they're still put through this incredibly difficult visa process in order to get visas. And with the elections looming, and this Kremlin is now becoming much more conscious of its public image, that the Kremlin has noticed been pushing hard for unrestricted visa access to Western Europe. And they've been met on the other side with Germans and French with promises, but it's still going to take years and years before you can get the entire European Union to agree to that.
Now let's get back to the energy issue. Not surprisingly, that the Prime Minister is against giving third-party access to the pipeline. But is he right by saying that this would remove incentives, remove the incentives if he does that?
Well, yes and no. I mean, there's one pipeline that runs through Ukraine at the moment, which takes 80% of the gas, and Russia's proposing to build two new ones, one in the north, one in the south. The north one is nearly finished. And it's not really an issue in so much as that's nearly finished, and it's not going over any territory. It starts in Russia, ends in Germany. The second one, South Stream, would go through lots of different countries. The Russians will probably pay for it themselves, but they're very against letting other people into it. I mean, they want it, because it's partly political. It's about diversifying away and taking the political power away from Ukraine to be able to turn off the gas, because they really are over the barrel. But the North Stream pipeline more or less solves that problem. And the South Stream, I think, is a bit of a feint. I'm not sure it'll ever happen. But certainly they want to do it on their own terms.
Okay, well, that's all we have time for, unfortunately. Ben Aris, thank you very much. Editor-in-Chief of Business New York. Thanks for coming into the program.